and welcome to the Bat Cave. I'm your host, BlindBat8719. On today's video, I'm going to go over my Illuna Apex of Wishes deck, or something that I've kind of titled Illuna Grant Me Wishes. The genesis of this deck is my Maelstrom Wanderer deck that I play in Commander/EDH. In that deck, I built a powerful deck, but I like the randomness of the Cascade mechanic that I've discussed several times before on previous videos. As a mechanic that lets you cast spells for free as long as they cost less than what you spent for the original spell. Illuna has a similar effect. I also like the Ghidorah King of the Cosmos artwork for it. Illuna Apex of Wishes costs 2 generic, green, blue, and red, legendary creature, beast elemental dinosaur, flying and trample with mutate 3 generic, hybrid red, green, blue, blue. Whenever this creature mutates, exile a card from the top of your library until you exile a non-land permanent card. Put that card into the battlefield or into your hand. So this is the the deck I built around. My first build of the deck, I did basically an all mutate deck, which is not a wrong way to play the deck. It's a lot of fun. You get a lot of things for free. But I was feeling that it was just very. A lot of times you just kept trying to mutate to get more and more things. So you hit like an Endrazor or a Cavalier of Flame and give things haste to attack for the win. So I wanted to do something that I wanted to build a deck that more was what I would like out of like playing powerful things. I don't always so I don't mutate every time, because some of the mutators you would have to play I felt like were just weak creatures by themselves. I'd rather play a few mutate things that have a better overall card quality. So to that, I'm going to start with the ramp spells I chose for this deck. Paradise Druid, again, this is really great in the mutate deck. Adds 1 mana of any color. It has hexproof as long as it's untapped. So it's hard for your opponents to, if you cast a mutate onto Paradise Druid, for them to kill it in response and therefore denying you the mutate trigger. Arcane Signet, again, I've said before, if you're playing a multicolored deck in Brawl, you should always include Arcane Signet. It is one of the best 2-drop ramp spells you can find, especially if you're not playing green. We are playing green, and I'm still playing this card. Cultivate, we are in green. This lets you search for 2 basic lands, puts 1 into play already, 1 into your hand for 3 mana. Dryad of the Elysian Grove. You may play an additional land on each of your turns. Lands you control every basic land type in addition to their other types. This doubles as ramp and as fixing. I was playing a historic deck that abused her ability to play additional lands each turn, as well as with another creature that lets you play additional lands each turn. So I felt like this would be a good fit for this deck, as it would, again, fix my mana and let you play additional lands each turn. Some of the card inspirations were from my Maelstrom Wanderer deck, where this kind of is like half of an Oracle Moldiah. The next card that I have is the other half of Oracle Moldiah, Rada Heart of Kel. The part of this that's like Oracle Moldiah is that you may look at the top card of your library at any time. You may play land cards from the top of your library. So with Rada out, it's not as though she ramped. It doesn't give us an extra land into play, but it acts. But it lets us see the top card and puts it into play, and we can play it off like that way. So it's probably maybe more like card draw, but it lets us help find lands, especially with nothing in our hand. It gives us an extra card in that way. And then she also, as a way of, she has first strike on our turn, and on my turn. And again, her final ability, 4 generic red green, gets +X until end of turn, where X number of lands you control. Rada can definitely finish out a game in a short time, and especially if our opponent forgets about her ability, we can pump her up surprisingly, either eliminate a creature, a blocker, or to try to finish off the opponent. Fires of Invention. Talked about this before. It's a card that's banned in almost every other format on Arena. So if it's ban worthy, it's a powerful card. We should probably be playing it if we're looking for a certain level of power. I am. Fire's Invention in this deck is interesting. It definitely lets us cast more things, and we have a lot more things that are on the higher end, higher converted mana cost. But the other interesting thing with this is that mutate is not free. if we want to cast a mutate spell, we actually have to tap our lands for it. So that's something to keep in mind when you're using mutate with Fires of Invention. But it's also, again, one of the best things we can do with it is we've later on with Cavalier of Flame, if we can cast Cavalier for free with Fires of Invention, we now free up our red mana sources to now give haste and pump our board. Next up is Migration Path. For this particular deck, I am running Guild Gates, but for this particular deck, I felt that the option of cycling was worth it over being able to find Guild Gates. I have enough basics in this to account for that. So again, Migration Path is in the deck, 4 mana to search for 2 basic lands from the battlefield tap. We play this on 4, that gets us our 6 mana, so that if we want on turn 6 to mutate on time. I'm sorry, on turn 5 to mutate a turn earlier. Migratory Greathorn, this is one of the few mutate cards in the deck. It functions as an expensive rampant growth for 3, but we get the basically upsize. Ideally we'd have a Paradise Druid in play, we mutate onto Paradise Druid, ramping us a land as well as giving us a bigger body in play. Thryx, the Sudden Storm. It's 3 blue for a flash flying legendary creature elemental. Spells you cast with converted mana cost 5 or greater, cost 1 less to cast and can't be countered. In previous iteration of this deck, I went more, when I was doing again the just good cards that I wanted to play, I leaned towards an elemental theme because our commander's an elemental. And I saw that I had Thryx in my collection, and I thought this would be a card that works well. It does reduce our mutate cost. A flash attacker or flash body is definitely a good surprise to have against our opponents as a sudden blocker. And also we can hold up mana on 5. Our opponents don't know what we're doing, and then flash him in so that on turn 6, even if we miss our land drop, we will have the mana to actually mutate our commander into play and get a free spell. Beanstalk Giant in the deck, mostly for the Fertile Footsteps, but this is a card, Brawl, you're very tightly fit in only 60 cards in your deck, and 24 of those are lands. A third of it is basically lands. So again, cards that can have multi-functionality, like the adventure cards, are cards that consider playing in your deck. If you're playing green, this is easily a way to, something that works early game or late game. So that is a reason why Beanstalk Giant is in here. Lets me either early game, I get to play search out for a land, or late game if I if I use the mutate ability for either my commander or for Auspicious Starrix, I can get a large body into play quickly. Next set of cards are basically just ramp and draw. Growth Spiral, draw a card, put a land from your hand into play. Oro, the same thing. Solemn Simulacrum, when he comes into play for 4 mana, search for a basic land, put it into play, helps us ramp, gets us to, us on 4, he gets us to 5, we have a land in hand, there's our 6 mana source, mutate onto Solemn Simulacrum, and when he dies, he draws us a card. The Great Henge is our expensive ramp. It's definitely a way that if we spend a lot of our early turns ramping up, getting lands into play, we can cast this and then hopefully have a creature afterwards to now start the chain of drawing more cards. This now is my targeted removal, Fire Prophecy. 1 in a red, deals, generic in a red. Instant, Fire Prophecy deals 3 damage to target creature, deals with some early things our opponent has. You may put a card from your hand in the bottom of your library if you do draw a card. So if we have a little bit on the expensive side on percent of converted mana cost, this can help us dig into something that's either smooth out our draws, or help us dig for something if we need to find an answer. Scavenging Ooze I put in as target removal. Uro is definitely a possibility in the format. There are definitely some cards that live in the graveyard. I'm thinking of the Escape Scry creature that's 2 and a black. I don't remember the name at the moment. But this is a way to help answer any graveyard shenanigans our opponents can be using against us. Collision Colossus. I saw this card. Again, I'm building, whenever I build multicolored decks, I like to look at the gold cards, since those can go into fewer decks than monocolored cards. And I thought while it's very niche, I thought it would definitely be a good combat trick. Again, it either gets rid of a flying creature, which leads the way for our general to attack, or it can pump a creature in response to try to save it or surprise kill a blocker or an attacker. And then Gemrazer's in the deck. It's just a good body for, it has reach and trample, which are effects that are good to have, and I think the reach is a surprise most of the time. And then the fact that it can destroy artifacts or enchantment in opponent controls when it mutates. He's one of, I think, our 4 mutate creatures in the deck. This is just a card I think, again, is for 3 mana to mutate to destroy an artifact or enchantment, I think is really good. This is doing my poor man's Corrosive Grip that I would have version that I would run in my commander deck. Reign of Revelation is the one just purely card draw spell we have in the deck. Draw 3 cards and discard a card. It's an instant for 3 generic and a blue. I think in terms of where we want to be, I think on the curve, having a 4-drop draw spell I think was good. It was one of the better ones I thought for where we were on the mana curve. I had a lot of 3-drop things that drew me cards or got card advantage, so I felt that having a 4-mana one that lets me draw 3 cards would be good to have. My board wipes. Storm's Wrath is in our colors. 2 generic red deals 4 damage to each creature and each planeswalker. Doesn't kill everything, but should hopefully kill enough of early aggression to stabilize the board, and the added bonus of dealing with some planeswalkers that might be hard to reach. And then Chandra, Awakened Inferno. Yes, this was probably mostly can act as a finisher, but most of the time I do end up using it as a way of wiping the board of non-elemental creatures. And again, the earlier iteration when this had like an elemental tribal bonus to it, this was great because it would be like a one-sided board wipe. I get less of that now, but she's definitely a card that people will concede to if she resolves. And most of the time she does resolve because she can't be countered, but if the opponent can't find a way to deal with her quickly, the game will end shortly. This is where now the fun part's in. I wanted to build, again, my Maelstrom deck has a history of being about copying effects, so I wanted to put a lot of the copy effects that are in Standard into this deck. So Repudiate, and Replicate. The Replicate's the copy side. Create a token, it's a copy of target creature you control. And when you make a copy of something that you've mutated, it has all of those abilities, not just whatever the top layer is. So that's kind of cool in that regard, that you could create your own monster like you with the mutated ability and get a second one that's the exact same copy of it. And then Repudiate, counter target activated or triggered ability. This card is very similar to the card known as Stifle, which is a very powerful card used in legacy formats. So the fact that it was in Standard, I felt I wanted to play it, and especially there are times when this would be almost like a gotcha ability to use against our opponent. It's something that doesn't get used a lot, and it's slightly different from a counter spell, which again people might anticipate, but stifling an ability or a trigger can definitely have some benefits. Spark Double, again, it's an easy copy thing. Gives us 2 copies of our commander potentially, some of our bigger creatures. Mythos of Illuna. This actually, I know I have in the copy section. More often than not, we're going to pay the extra green and red mana to have it fight a creature. So we do end up more often than not using this as a removal for one of our opponent's creatures. Because if they play something bigger than what we have, we just copy it and they fight each other. But it's still another copy spell that I wanted to play. And then Thassa Deep Dwelling kind of lets us get rebuy on our mutate creatures. Sorry, not rebuy on the mutate creatures, but this deck tends to just play 1 threat out at a time and only have 1 creature in play. So if we mutate onto something, we can always use Thassa to then go wide by blinking out the mutated creature and now getting 2 creatures back. And again, her ability of tapping another target creature is useful either as defensive purposes to prevent attackers, or offensive by tapping down their blockers. She also works really well with one of our cards that win us the game, Terror of the Peaks. Terror of the Peaks is 3 generic red for a 5/4 flying dragon. The first part, additional 3 life to cast. Not really caring about that as much. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Terror of the Peaks deals damage equal to that creature's power to any target. So what would be kind of sweet would be that if we were to say turn 4 have a Thassa out, turn 5 Terror of the Peaks, and then turn 6 mutate our commander onto Terror of the Peaks. We can swing in for 6, We don't get the original end of the battlefield trigger, but then when Thassa blinks out the mutated creature, we now get another 6 damage we can deal to our opponent or to a creature our opponent controls. So this is one of the ways we can help accelerate our win. Cavalier of Flame, when I was saying before, this had an elemental theme to it. I had both the green and red Cavaliers. I decided to go a little lower on the mana, what ramp spells that I have that cost less than 5. So I gave the Green Cavalier the boot, but I kept Cavalier of Flame because of his ability to give creatures +1/+0 and haste. I thought that would be a really good effect to have in the deck. I'm already realizing now Perforos could be another card that would be a way to replicate this once the deck rotates out, when standard changes and I lose some of these earlier format cards. But this is definitely a card we want to try to flip into, hopefully with some open mana, and get some hasty attacks on our opponent. Auspicious Starrix. This is kind of like another version of our commander. The only benefit is that this hits any permanent, so it will also hit lands. So sometimes we do get lackluster things where it just ramps out one land as opposed to a large spell. Again, it's basically doing the same thing as our commander, so having 2 copies of that is always a good thing. And the other way you can play around it too is that you could always choose to play the Starrix out on 5 and then play mutate on 6. You know, and then mutate my commander onto it and you get both effects. Also useful, if we have the commander out first and we draw this later, we get another rebuy on all that stuff. Vivien, Monster's Advocate. She's really in the deck because she's a planeswalker. She's green in her colors, and I just wanted to play with her. So that's kind of the justification for playing Vivien in this deck. Quartzwood Crasher. Again, I was saying before about multicolored cards that I could possibly play in the deck, and then the idea that I can create more tokens. Part of the conclusion for this card is based off of, again, the Maelstrom Wanderer deck, where I include, I'm blanking. I think it's the Aberrant. It's an insect from the second time we went back to Ravnica. It's a 7/7 with trample that when it deals damage to a player, create a copy of said creature, making it basically a token copy of a 7/7 trampler. So Quartzwood Crasher is kind of my facsimile for that creature. Now it will only make us 1 creature, but the token we make can be exponentially larger if we have more trampling creatures, which is part of the reason why Gemrazer works well in the deck. Our commander has trample, so we have a couple ways, and then even with Vivien, she's making trampling tokens. We can make get a few trampling bodies into play to create more tokens, or create bigger tokens. Dream Meter, I think, is just a great card. I really enjoy playing with it. It does a few different things for us. It can help us fix, set up our next turn. It can help remove a problematic permanent, like an enchantment or an artifact, planeswalker even. It's also flash, which is a nice surprise to pull on our opponent. So yeah, I just like playing with this card. Agent of Treachery, it's banned in a lot of formats. It's powerful, so it's powerful. We want to have and I want a certain power level. I'm going to play Agent of Treachery. This is definitely a card that will cause opponents to concede when you cast it. Yidaro the Wandering Monster. I love the Godzilla art for this one. Basically, he's in this deck. Again, kind of almost like how Beanstalk Giant works both early and late. I could cycle this early and draw a card and still have him back in the deck. Or later on, if I could either if I flip into him or even just get 7 mana out, having a 8/8 trample haste creature, definitely my opponent will need to have an answer for it. Otherwise, this could take over the game. And then Genesis Ultimatum. I love casting things for free. So the fact that I get to cast multiple things for free is one of the reasons I want to be playing this card in this deck. And I don't think there's much more I need to say about that card. I just think it's a lot of fun to come off with an ultimatum. They're always fun for me. And now on to the mana base. Basically, I'm still, again, it's a 3-color deck, so I'm choosing to use Guild Gates. I have the Simic, the Gruul, and this Izzet Guild Gates in here, along with Plaza of Harmony. Plaza of Harmony with 2 Guild Gates in play doubles as another command tower for us. Field of the Dead, we're playing a lot, definitely playing more than 7 named cards. Field of Ruin is in there to deal with other Field of the Dead. Fabled Passage, Evolving Wilds to make sure we get the mana we need to cast our spells. I have 1 Castle Vantress in the event that I'm able to set up a mutate effect for my commander or for Starrix. That's really why it's in the deck. And that is the deck tech. So enough of that. Let's head into the arena for some brawls.